divine souls. In this series on the significance of Radha Krishna Bhakti in Kaliyug, I've explained to you that every soul is astik, meaning every soul loves God and desires only God, because every soul is ansh of Bhagwan. So it's our nature to desire God, and that nature can't be changed. Even if someone wants to become a Gnostic, someone who doesn't believe in God, they can say it from their mouth. They can even believe it from their mind, but their soul can only desire God. So no one can become a Gnostic. Even if they say, I don't believe in God, they still desire happiness. And happiness is another name for Bhagwan. Anando Brahmeti Vyajanat. Vedas tell us Bhagwan is Anand. Raso Vai Saha. There's not Anand in him. He is Anand. So desiring Anand, meaning perfect happiness, and desiring God is the very same thing. So if you say, I don't desire God or I don't believe in God, but you still desire happiness, it's like saying, I don't believe in my father, but I believe in my mother's husband. So if you desire happiness, you do believe in God. You are desiring God and nothing else. So every soul desires only happiness. We have no other desire. Every other desire is only a created desire, developed in our mind because of the desire for happiness. Whether it's, oh, I want to have a loving companion. Why? Because having such a companion will bring me happiness. I want to become wealthy. Why? Because becoming wealthy will bring me happiness. Everything we do is for happiness. All the other things are self-created desires, but the desire for happiness is not self-created. It's an eternal desire, which is just natural to every soul, because the soul is related to God and God is happiness. There's a natural pull between every ansh and his anshi. Anshi means God, the one to whom we belong, and the ansh means we're a part of our anshi. Every ansh naturally desires his anshi. Thus, every soul desires God. And because we desire God, you can also say we desire happiness, and this desire to obtain that happiness is the reason for every action that we perform. And since we are eternal, so since eternity, for uncountable lifetimes, every moment we have been seeking this happiness. In other words, we have been seeking God. But we have failed to attain it because we did not know the proper way to attain God. Vedas tell us, Tameva viditvati mrityumeti nanyah pantha vidyate yanaya. In this Veda mantra, there are three things mentioned. The souls, meaning all of us, God, the supreme power, and Maya, the material power. This Veda mantra says, only by crossing Maya can the soul become free from death. Only by knowing God can this soul cross Maya and become free from death. There is no other way. So it means we must know God. You can say there are two main goals of a soul: to attain perfect happiness, divine happiness, and to attain freedom from suffering forever, for good, two goals: happiness and freedom from suffering. Happiness, or attaining happiness, is equal to attaining God, because He is happiness. So, rasagvam hyevayam labdhva nandi bhavati. By attaining God, a soul becomes Anandhi. And by getting freedom from Maya, the soul becomes free from suffering. However, the two go hand in hand. Meaning, if you attain God, you are free from Maya. You have to get past Maya to reach God. So it means, if you've attained perfect happiness, you are free from suffering. It's included. You don't have to say, I want to be wealthy and I don't want to be poor. I want to be healthy and I don't want to be sick. No one says that. They just say, I want to be wealthy. I want to be healthy. In the same way, there's no need to say, I want to attain happiness and I want to be free from suffering. If you're happy, you are free from suffering. It's included. But freedom from suffering does not necessarily include the attainment of happiness, because you get freedom from suffering every night when you go to sleep. When your mind goes into sushupti avastha, deep, dreamless, thoughtless sleep, you have no pain but no happiness at that time. Nothing. So you see, you're free from pain when you're in deep sleep, but you have not attained happiness. So freedom from suffering does not include the attainment of happiness. However, the attainment of happiness does include freedom from suffering. So you can just say every soul has only one goal: the attainment of perfect happiness. And that perfect happiness is God. So only by attaining God can a soul become perfectly happy. Ved says, Anando Brahma. And for the soul, Anandhi Bhavati. There's an important difference here. Anando Brahma means God is Anand. And Rasagvam Hyevayam Labdva Nandi Bhavati, the soul who attains God becomes Anandi. You know, like we have a word dhani. Dhani means dhan wala. Jiske paas dhan hai, wo dhani hai. वो धन नहीं है, right? When you become dhani, you become wealthy, you don't become your wealth. You are in possession of that wealth. So you're called wealthy, dhani. Similarly, you don't become Anand, you become Anandi. You're in possession of Anand. The deeper meaning of this is you do not become God, but you receive God's blissfulness. Bhoga matra samya lingacha Brahma Sutra. God gives you the same bliss He has, the same amount, but you are still a soul and He's God. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. Gita. An existing thing can never cease to exist, and a non-existing thing can never be brought into existence. And since we know that there are only three things that exist, God, the souls, and Maya, so we know that those three things must have existed forever, because if they exist now, it means they've always existed, because if they didn't exist, they can't be brought into existence. And if they exist now, they will always continue to exist, because an existing thing cannot be made to cease to exist. So Brahma, Jeev, and Maya have eternally existed and will always exist. Whether we're under the bondage of Maya or whether we attain God, we are still souls. A soul never becomes God. It becomes God-like. We're already God-like because we're divine and we're alive like God is, but we become more God-like because we become free from the bondage of Maya. We get perfect happiness, perfect knowledge, eternal life, a divine body, divine mind, divine senses, but we are still a soul. But instead of inhabiting a material body with a material mind, we inhabit a divine body with a divine mind. But we're still a soul and God is still God. The Bhakt who attains God receives a divine body, mind and senses. The Jnani who attains only liberation, he doesn't receive a divine body, mind or senses. He merely merges into God. With no body, no mind, no senses, just his soul, the original divine soul, merges into God. So you can say he loses his personal identity. His mind is gone, his body is gone, so his personality is gone. But he still exists. The soul, his actual self is still there. Muktanam api siddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prashantatma kotishvapi mahamune. Bhagavad. Out of millions of liberated souls, every once in a while, very rarely it happens that a soul who's already been liberated, who's left his body, mind, gone beyond Maya, merged into formless God, he comes back out of that liberated state, receives another birth. Why? To do bhakti so he can attain devotion to the personal form of God and get premanand. Shankaracharya also accepted this fact and stated it himself. So you see, even after liberation, the soul retains its identity. If it didn't, how could a liberated soul come back out and get reborn? If the soul ceased to exist because it became God, then it could never come back out of that state of liberation. So the goal of every soul is to attain perfect happiness by attaining God. This is only possible in a human body. So we're very lucky to receive this human birth. However, we have no idea how long this birth is going to last, and when it's gone, we could be born in any other species as we have uncountable times in the past. And it could be millions or billions of births before we get another human birth. And when we get another human birth, we'll find ourselves in the same situation we are today, with a desire for God, a need to get the knowledge to know how to find God, and then it will also be necessary for us to have the desire and the determination to follow the path to God. That's why our scriptures always give us two kinds of motivation. What will you get if you attain God? That I explained, perfect happiness. And what will happen to you if you don't attain God in this life? That also I told you. Could be a lot of births in the lower species, suffering many, many lifetimes. Do batan ko bhool mat jo chahasi kalyan Narayan ek mot ki dujo Shri Bhagavan. A Mahapurush says, if you want to attain God in this life, then always remember two things. Number one, he says, your death. Remember, death is coming, and it could come quickly, it could come at any time. And number two, Shri Bhagavan. So number one is Maut. Remember, you could die at any time, so that you don't waste time, because otherwise you keep putting off the spiritual things for the little physical day-to-day things that you always have a huge list of that you have to take care of. So Maut, number one, and God, number 2. Always remember these 2 things. So we have to know God in this life. However, Veda also told us, at this point we learned from the Vedas, that in fact you can't know God. Why? Because you have a material mind and God is divine. You have material senses and God is divine. So a material mind cannot know divine God. Material eyes cannot see divine God. God is the one who gives life to us. God is the one who inspires our senses and mind to function, illuminates them. So how could those senses which are receiving illumination from God illuminate Him? It's impossible. He's absolutely beyond our reach. Go char jahan lagi man jai, so sab maya jane hu bhai. Wherever the mind can go, it is limited to the realm of Maya, and God, by very definition, is beyond Maya. So at this point, we felt disappointed that, well, we are supposed to know God. That's the only way we can get happiness, yet it's impossible for us to know God. But then we learned that there is a way, that if someone receives God's grace, then he can know God. Uncountable souls have received God's grace and through His grace known Him, but we have not. So it means there's some kind of condition that we're not fulfilling, and those souls who received God's grace fulfilled that condition. The condition is surrender. The soul who surrenders to God receives His grace. Through His grace, he gets a divine mind and divine senses. Then he can know God and perceive and experience God. Then we ask the question, if surrender is required as a condition for receiving God's grace, then why do we call God Akaran Karun, causelessly gracious? He should just grace all of us right now. So it was explained that surrendering to God is not a condition like a payment. Like getting something from the store has a condition. You have to provide payment of equal value of the item that you want. But surrender is not a payment or a trade with God, that He wants our surrender in return for that. He gives grace. Our surrender is of no value to Him per se. Surrender is simply the means of receiving His grace, because grace is received in here, in our mind. So it's the mind that has to be surrendered. Since we have free will, if we don't surrender our mind to God, He cannot grace us. So it's up to us to become surrendered. The moment we become surrendered, He graces us. So the delay is not from His side. The delay is from our side. So in order to become surrendered, we understood we have to surrender our mind. However, our mind is already attached in this world. So to detach the mind from the world and attach it to God, since we only have one mind, it can only be surrendered in one place at one time, we had to understand deeply about the nature of worldly happiness. Because our mind is attached in the world due to its belief that there is happiness in this world. So how do we change that? We have to believe there's happiness in God, and that worldly happiness is not real happiness. So it was explained that real happiness must be of an unlimited amount and last forever. Only such happiness can be considered true. If it doesn't last forever, it wasn't true happiness. And if you can find a greater happiness, more than that, that's not true happiness either. So we want absolute, everlasting happiness. That happiness is only in God. It's not in this world. We know that from our own experience, daily experience. And I also explained to you that the happiness we do experience in this world is a product of our own thinking. It's not experienced because there's actual happiness in anything or any person. It is only experienced according to the amount of attachment we have to a person or thing. Accordingly, we have a corresponding desire for that thing, and according to the greatness of that desire, when we get that thing, we get a feeling of excitement that we call happiness. But it doesn't last. It fades and finishes, and we're left looking for something more. So this temporary worldly happiness is called illusion. The world is not an illusion. The happiness of this world is an illusion because it's self-created and self-experienced based on our thinking. The same thing that makes you happy one minute can make you unhappy the next. A person whom you love very dearly can make you happy. They can also make you unhappy. So is there happiness in the person or is there unhappiness? There's neither. It depends on your thinking. If they meet your expectations, you get happiness. If they don't meet your expectations, you get unhappiness. So the happiness and unhappiness are created and experienced in there. It's not in the person. So there's no happiness or unhappiness in the world. It's all a creation of our own mind. Thus, understanding this, we know we have to attach our mind to God if we want perfect happiness. Thus, we need to follow some path to reach God. It was explained to you that all the paths and spiritual practices belong in three categories: the path of karma, the path of jnana, and the path of bhakti. The path of karma is incomplete on its own because good actions alone take you to Swarg. They do not result in the attainment of divine bliss, nor do they result in release from the bondage of Maya. The path of Gyan is also incomplete on its own. By following the practice of Gyan Marg, someone can only reach self-realization or Atma Gyan, which is not a liberated state, and it's not a state of divine bliss. So through the path of Gyan, you cannot attain divine happiness, nor can you get liberated from Maya. If you add bhakti to either of these paths, then karma becomes karma yoga. Yoga means union of your mind with God through self-surrender. So this is bhakti. Karma plus bhakti equals karma yoga. That results in liberation from Maya and the attainment of divine bliss. If the Jnani also surrenders to God through such bhakti, he becomes a Jnana yogi. And the Jnana yogi can reach God because he's added bhakti. So that Jnana yogi gets liberated from Maya and receives the experience of Brahmanand, the bliss of formless God. I explained to you that the path of karma is very difficult because it requires us to follow many very strict rules which are impossible to follow during Kaliyug. And even if we do succeed in that, we only get a temporary vacation in Swarg, only to come back here and start again. The path of Gyan is also extremely difficult to qualify for, very difficult to follow. The meditation is impossible for those who have any attachment to their body whatsoever. Meditating on formless God is utterly impossible unless someone already has control over their mind. And even if the Jnani succeeds in following this path, it will take him many lifetimes to fully purify his heart. And even if he succeeds in doing that, in the end he still has to surrender to the personal form of God, Sakar Brahm. After which time, through God's grace, he gets liberated from Maya and he receives Brahmanand, the bliss of formless God. But I told you that this Brahmanand cannot compare at all to Premanand. The one through whose grace Gyanis receive Brahmagyan, the divine knowledge, is called Brahma Vidya. She's a divine goddess, a divine power. Through the grace of Brahma Vidya, Gyanis get the knowledge of God and the experience of Brahmanand. One day, Javali Muni was walking through the jungle and he saw a beautiful young lady sitting with her eyes closed in meditation. So after some time, he asked, "Excuse me, can you tell me, what are you meditating on? Who are you?" She said, "Brahmanandena purnaham tenanandena triptadhi. Tathapi shunyam manye Krishna ratim bina." She says, "I am Brahma Vidya. And what am I meditating on? Well, I'm trying to receive Premanand, the bliss of Shri Krishna's divine love." Why? She says, although I am full, I am purn, I am complete, and I am tript, totally satisfied through what? Brahmanand, the bliss of formless God. Yet, Shunyamatmanam manye, I consider myself to be empty. Krishna ratim bina, without the divine love of Shri Krishna. Brahma Vidya herself, who is already fully experiencing the bliss of formless God, is saying, I am incomplete without the divine love of Shri Krishna. During the avatar kal of Shri Krishna, one such Gyani Paramahans happened to be passing through Nandagaon, the village of Shri Krishna's childhood. He exclaims, Nigamataro pratishakham mrigitam militam param brahma militam idanim gopavadhuti patanchale nadham. He says, "Oh Gyanis," he's saying to his fellow Gyani Paramahansas, "don't you know, we have sought out that Brahm in all the branches of the Vedas and Upanishads. They try to find Brahm by studying the Vedas. So we searched for Brahm in all the various branches of Vedas and Upanishads, and you know where I found him? I saw him right here. He ran and grabbed onto the end of the sari of a gopi, and he's like, you know how children do that? They hide under the end of their mother's sari. I found Brahm right here in Braj. Shrinu sakhi kautukamekam nandaniketangane maya drishtam godhuli dhusarango Nrityati Vedanta Siddhanta. Another Gyani exclaims, "Oh Gyanis, you know that Brahm that you're all looking for? I found him here. He's playing in the courtyard of Nanda Baba. He's dancing in the muddy courtyard to please his mother." Another Gyani says to his disciples, Paramimam-upadeshamadriyadhvam nigamavaneshu nitanta khedakhinna. Oh, my Gyani disciples, you've been searching for Brahm through all the branches of all the Upanishads. Yet we've been unable to find him. Our intellect reaches its wit's end and it gives up. I have found the same Brahm here in Braj tied up to the ukal by this lady Yashoda. So it's an amazing experience for these Gyanis to see their Brahm, their formless Brahm, who they've never been able to see in their whole life, to see him in a personal form. Their heart gets stolen by the charm of Shri Krishna's beauty and his naughty, playful personality. Shri Krishna's charm is so great, and that charm is experienced in its fullness only by those bhakta saints who surrender to the personal form of God, that one time a Jnani was walking along and he saw a gopi meditating. So he was thinking that this gopi must be meditating on Shri Krishna. Whereas we meditate on formless God, this gopi must be meditating on the personal form of God. So when the gopi opened her eyes, he asked her, "Oh, were you meditating on Shri Krishna?" She said, "Pratyahritya muni kshanam vishayato yasmin manodhitsati balasau vishayeshu sajjati manah pratyaharanti tatah yasya spurti lavaya hanta hridaye yogi samutkantyate mugdhasau kila pashyatasya hridayan nishkrantima kankshati." So she told him, "I'm trying to get Krishna out of my heart. I can't get any work done. Every time I think of him, I feel so much viraha for him, so much love for him, tears come in my eyes, I lose my consciousness, I can't do any of my household chores." So the Jnani was amazed. Here, this Brahm, great munis, great yogis, they sit and they try to meditate. They try to take their mind away from this world. They try, even for a moment, to bring their mind out of the world and put it in God just for 1 second. And here this gopi, she's trying to put her mind in the world so that she can forget about Shri Krishna just for 1 second. These yogis meditate for years trying to get a glimpse of Shri Krishna in their meditation. And this same gopi is trying to forget about Shri Krishna so she can get some peace of mind and do her household duties. Just like one gopi says, "Santyaj sakhita dudantam yadi sukhalavam api samihase sakhya smaraya kimapi tadanyat vismaraya hantamohanam manasa." She's talking to one of her sakhis who's talking about Shri Krishna. She says, "Stop. If you desire the best thing for me, then don't bring up his name. Talk about anything other than Shri Krishna." Why? Because as soon as I remember him, I'm lost in thoughts of Shri Krishna and I can't perform any of my household work. So the Jnanis are amazed by this state of the gopis, that their mind is so naturally absorbed in the bliss of Sakar Brahm all the time. So those Jnanis also desire to obtain that high divine state. So we see there's something special about being devoted to the personal form of God, which gives something more than just getting the state of liberation. So now you've understood about the limitations of the path of karma and gyan, how they're both dependent on bhakti. Now let's learn something about the path of bhakti. Our Shastras say that to decide if something is the correct path, there are 5 criteria that you have to measure it by. It's called Anvay, Vyatirek, Anya Nirapekshata, Sarvatrakita, Sanatanatva. 5 criteria that have to be met. Only if a path can meet all 5 of these criteria is it the correct path for attaining your goal. Number 1, Anvay. Does this path take you to your goal? Number 2, Vyatirek. Without this path, is it possible to reach your goal? Number 3, Anya Nirapekshata. The path should be totally independent. Simply by following this path, without having to supplement it with anything else, you should be able to reach your goal. Sarvatrakita, it should be available to all. Anyone should be able to follow this path with no special restrictions. Number 5, Sanatanatva. The outcome of following the path, what you receive, the pal, should last forever. Or you can say the path itself should last forever. It should not die. These 5 things. So we know, we looked at karma and gyan. They don't even meet the first criterion. Anvay. By following that, does this path give you your sadhya? The goal you want to attain, can you attain it by following this path? What is our goal? Ananda prapti, dukkha nivritti. God realization and liberation from Maya. So karma doesn't give either of these. By following the path of karma, the most you can get is going to the celestial abodes. Swarg itself is under Maya. So if you're in Swarg, you're still under the bondage of Maya. You get only Mayic happiness over there, Mayic pleasure. And then you come back here. So the path of karma doesn't give you your divine goal, nor does the path of gyan. Gyan can give you at most self-realization, Atma Gyan. Even in that state, you're still under the bondage of Maya. You still have a material mind, even though it's been purified. It's purely sattvic, but it's still material. And you can fall back into desiring the world. So neither karma or gyan even satisfy this first criterion, Anvay. So of course there's no question of them satisfying the second, that without this path could you reach your goal? But bhakti satisfies both of these first two. Through the path of bhakti you can get the attainment of divine bliss and freedom from Maya, and without the path of bhakti you cannot get God realization or liberation from Maya. Bhakti revainam nayati, bhakti revainam pashyati, bhakti revainam darshayati, bhakti vasha purusho, bhakti reva bhuyasi. Ved says, only through bhakti can you attain union with God. Only through bhakti can you get darshan of God. So bhakti is supreme, because God himself is under the power of bhakti. This is what this Veda mantra means. So bhakti takes you to God, and only through bhakti can you reach God. There is no other way. Nayamatma pravachanena labhyo na medhaya na bahuna shrutena yamevaish vrinute tena labhyastasyaish atma vivrinute tanugvam swam. Kathopanishad says, You can't reach God through any kind of self-effort. Not through studying the scriptures, not through listening to speeches about God, no matter how intelligent you are, not by debating about God, not through any amount of intellectual meditation. You can only reach God through self-surrender, because then God graces you. In other words, only through bhakti. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha gurau tasyaite kathita hyartha prakashyante mahatmanah. Shvetashvatara Upanishad. You can reach God through bhakti. Gita says the same thing. Purusha sapara punsa labhyas bhaktya labhyas tvananyaya. You can attain God through bhakti. Is there any other way you can reach God? Naham vedair na tapasa na danena na chejjaya shakya evam vidhorja drashtum drishtavan asimam yatha bhaktyaatmananyaya shakya ahamevam vidhorjuna gyatum drashtuncha tatvena praveshtuncha parantapa. Shri Krishna says, Arjun, I am not attainable through study of the Vedas or other scriptures, not through any kind of good action, good karma, not through any practice like austerities, karma. I am only attainable through single-minded bhakti, ananya bhakti. Whether you want to know me, see me, enter into me, there's only one way, bhakti. In the Bhagavatam, Shri Krishna says, Na sadhayati mam yogo, na jnanam dharma uddhava, na svadhyayastapastyago, yatha bhaktir mamorjita. I am not reachable through yog, gyan, karma, dharma, swadhyay, the study of the scriptures, tap, austerities, tyag, renunciation. I am only attainable through bhakti. Bhaktya hamekayagrahyah shraddhayatma priya satam bhakti punati mannishtha shvapakanapi sambhavat. This is also from the Bhagavatam. Shri Krishna says, I am only attainable through bhakti. Bhakti is so powerful that it can purify even the most fallen soul. Whereas karma and gyan, dharma, satyadayopeto, vidya va tapasanvita, bhaktya mam abhijanati, bhaktya petamatmanam na samyak prapunati. He says that dharma, meaning good karma, combined with truthfulness and compassion, and gyan, combined with great renunciation and austerity, neither of those can fully purify a soul's mind. Only bhakti can do that. So, let alone the attainment of God, other paths like karma and gyan, they can't even fully purify our mind. Na samyak prapunatihi. The mind cannot be fully purified through karma or gyan, only through bhakti. Yatha yathatma parimrijyate sau mat punyagatha shravanabhidhanai. Tatha tatha pashyati vastu sukshmam chakshuryathaivanjana samprayuktam. Just as a person who has gotten a temporary blindness because he got something in his eyes, if he takes a medicated ointment and applies it to his eyes, the medicine gradually allows him to regain his sight. So first, it's all black for him, then he starts to see some light, then he starts to be able to make out some shapes, then he starts to be able to see color and see more clearly. Eventually, he regains his eyesight in full. In the same way, by meditating on Shri Krishna's name, form, virtues, leelas, abode, and divine associates, a soul gradually purifies his heart, gets closer and closer to Shri Krishna, and eventually receives his divine vision. However, Katham vinaro maharsham dravata va chetasa vina vinanandashru kalaya shuddhed bhaktya vinashaya. Without tears of love for Shri Krishna, without the heart melting for him, without feeling a thrill in your heart and body when you remember his name and leelas, the mind can never be purified. So we have to do the real, sincere, heartfelt devotion to Shri Krishna. Only that can purify our heart. The Ramayana tells us the same thing. Bari mathe baru hoy grita sikate baru tela binu hari bhajan na bhavatariya Yah siddhanta apela. Tulsidas Ji says, you may be able to do something impossible like churning water and getting ghee out of it, or getting oil out of dry sand. But even if you could do something impossible like that, you would still not be able to attain God or cross this Maya, Binu Hari Bhajana, without doing bhakti to Shri Krishna. Tulsidas Ji also says, even if there's a full moon out and it's a clear night, so the full moon is shining bright, all the stars are shining brightly, and in addition to that, you light all the surrounding hills on fire, still night will not be banished. You can have that much light, yet it will still be night. The only thing that can get rid of the night is when the sun rises. Similarly, you can do any practice, karma, yoga, gyan. Mayic bondage will never go until you do bhakti. Sadhak siddha vimukta udasi kavi kovid kritagya sannyasi. Yogi sur sutapas jnani dharma nirat pandit vigyani tarahina binu se mam swami ram namami namami namami. Everyone, sadhak, siddha, vimukta, yogi, jnani, pandit, everyone has to surrender to God through bhakti. Thus, we see bhakti is the only path that meets these first two criteria, anvay and vyatirek. Through bhakti, we can attain our divine goal, and without bhakti, it's impossible to attain that divine goal. So tomorrow we'll see if bhakti can also meet these next three criteria. Is it fully independent? Is it available to all? And does it last forever? Boliye Vrindavan Bihari Lal Ki.